Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Throughout his works, Kurt Vonnegut is known for using satire and science fiction themes which are reflections of his humanistic beliefs and ideas from when he was a prisoner of war in World War II. Kurt Vonnegut was born November 11, 1922, in Indianapolis, Indiana, which was a very populated city and had many things to do, such as an amusement park, parades, and many public gatherings. He was born to Kurt Vonnegut Sr., who was a prominent architect at the time, and Edith Vonnegut, who was the daughter of a wealthy brewer. He's the youngest of three siblings. Alice is his older sister, and Bernard is his older brother. And during his childhood, his parents suffered from financial struggles during the Depression, and this caused him to be pulled out of his private school and receive a public school education. He attended Shortridge High School, where he began writing for the Echo and eventually became managing editor for the Sun, both of which were school papers. Here he developed his writing philosophy, which was get the facts, compose straightforward sentences, know the audience. After high school, he studied at Cornell, and he wrote for the Cornell Daily Sun. He studied chemistry, but later admitted to being a lousy student and dropped out his junior year. He was sent to basic training in 1943, and here he also attended university and studied mechanical engineering at Carnegie Technology Institute and the University of Tennessee. He was deployed to Europe in 1943, where he was captured in Dresden with about 50 other soldiers, 5 being from his infantry, as prisoners of war. They were captured during the Battle of the Bulge, and they were held in an airtight meat locker of a slaughterhouse, which actually allowed them to survive a bombing that wiped out some of the city. This is what inspired his book Slaughterhouse-Five. After World War II, he arrived back home May of 1945, and he was awarded a Purple Heart at age 22. He married his childhood sweetheart, Jane Cox, and they moved to Chicago and both attended the University of Chicago, where he studied as a graduate student in anthropology. He was also a reporter for the Chicago City News Bureau at the time. After this, they moved to Schenectady, New York, and had their first son, Mark. Vonnegut got a job in PR at General Electric, and this actually began his career as a nonfiction writer because he was gathering materials and ideas for several novels and short stories, such as Player Piano and Cat's Cradle. After selling some short stories to magazines, this allowed him to quit his job and move to Cape Cod, Mass. To write full-time. Player Piano is Vonnegut's first novel published, which was in 1952, and it uses the idea of robotics in the workplace to bring up question of human purpose and automated life. This is his most straightforward novel, and from this he expands on satire and fiction in his later works. Cat's Cradle is Vonnegut's fourth published novel, which was in 1963, and this was inspired by World War II and the atomic bomb. He uses fictionalized events to represent the bombing of Hiroshima and how the people felt during the bombing. Ice Nine is used to represent the atomic bomb, and Bokononism is also important because it is a religion that's used to represent how mankind will blindly follow truths that are actually made up of lies and false narrative. Slaughterhouse-Five was published in 1969, and it is seen as Vonnegut's breakthrough novel. This one was also inspired by his time as a prisoner of war in World War II, and it can actually be seen as a parallel to Vonnegut's life because it is the story of a young boy during and after the war. It contains fictional ideas such as time-shifting and aliens, and the aliens can be seen loosely compared to the Germans, but they're also there to give outside perspective to the situation and to the war. Breakfast of Champions was published in 1952, and it follows the story of Kilgore Trout, who was a little-known science fiction writer, and Dwayne Hoover, who was a mentally ill car salesman. This story connects the seemingly meaningless daily occurrences in life with the timelines of fate through the flat and uneventful tone used in the narrative. This book touches on the topics of war, sex, racism, success, politics, and pollution in America, and reminds us how to see the truth. Mental illness in Breakfast of Champions is one of the main topics, and Vonnegut himself actually did suffer from mental illness, which you can see both through the character of Dwayne Hoover and through Vonnegut's narrative himself. He did this in an effort to normalize mental illnesses, which were not exactly seen equal to real illnesses or diseases at the time. And one of the quotes from his narrative in the book is, "I think I am trying to make my head as empty as it was when I was born into this damaged planet 50 years ago." Some other quotes from the book are, "The things other people have put into my head, at any rate, do not fit together nicely, are often useless and ugly, are out of proportion with one another, are out of proportion with life as it is really outside my head." Kurt Vonnegut. Here is what he hoped new truths might do for him: enable him to laugh at his troubles, to go on living, and to keep out of the north wing of the Midland County General Hospital, which was for lunatics, and this was about the character Dwayne Hoover. In his later years, he wrote his last fiction novel, which was Timequake, and this was a bestseller, but it actually had mixed reviews because it was half science fiction and half philosophical observations based around the plot, which was the universe stops for 10 years and the people have to relive those last 10 years exactly how they happened, which eliminates everyone's free will. After this, he worked on nonfiction, and he wrote A Man Without Country, which is a collection of biographical works exploring human values and beliefs. Kurt Vonnegut passed away April 11th, 2007, and he suffered complications from a fall outside of his home in New York, which led to head injuries, which eventually led to his death. He is remembered as one of the greatest American writers of the second half of the 20th century.